but we're going to make it interactive. And if you have a question and you don't feel comfortable asking it in English, just do it in Dutch, and I'll try to translate it as good as I can to Munroe so she can answer your question. We're already on Instagram and Facebook Live, Dylan? Yeah? If you're watching from there and you have a question, please ask it over there. Dylan is watching everything, and if you have a question, he will ask it for you. First, Munroe's going to start with a talk, and then I have some questions, but please spit and give me everything you have, because how many possibilities do you have to ask her a question? So I would say please use it. And then, is she already there? So if she can already hear us? Oh my God. Hey!
Hi.
So nice to have you here. It would have been nice if you could be here, but there's a lockdown again over there, right?
Yeah, well, not quite, but it's looking like quite uncertain. I mean, our government's not the best in terms of coming up with an actual strategy, but the rate of infections going up, and I think it would be irresponsible of me to move out of a high risk environment into your country and possibly bring it with me. It wouldn't be fair.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, still,
And I'm so sorry that I'm not there. I was so looking forward to it as well. I
well,
had all my looks.
we're still happy that you're here in this way. So I'm just gonna give the stage to you to start and tell us about you and everything you want to tell us, and then I'll be back to ask you some questions.
Fantastic. How long have I got?
An hour.
An hour talk?
Yeah, but it could be shorter. So just talk how long you want, and then I'm just sitting here, so that's just fine.
Fantastic. I'm just going to talk a little bit about myself, and I believe that we're going to do a Q&A, so we can have a talk then. But yeah, so my name's Munroe. I am an activist. I got my break really through modeling, and I realized that I wasn't really getting the opportunity to speak about my experiences as a Black trans woman living in the UK. It was kind of like the elephant in the room. I was being employed for the physicality of my body, but not necessarily actually getting to talk about what it was like to be me or be someone like me. So it just felt uneasy for me. So I started to be more vocal on social media. And then I eventually, I've skipped a big bunch. there's like 5 years in there of, really slogging and hustling and working with lots of different designers and photographers. And I just really worked my way up to the point where I was getting to work with amazing photographers like Nick Knight, who I'd looked up to since I was in high school, and Rankin, and David Bailey, and some of the experiences weren't great, but a lot of them were really educational in terms of how the fashion industry works. So I eventually booked a big campaign for a brand called Uniqlo, which is a Japanese clothing brand. And that was the first opportunity really that I got to talk about what it's like to be a Black queer trans woman in the UK. And I just thought, I can do something with this. I can hopefully reach other people who feel the same way. I mean, at the time, I was in an abusive relationship. I was, not really leaving the house unless it was like nighttime because I was paying my rent by DJing. I was a club kid. And it just felt very lonely not being able to talk about how I felt because I felt like I was the only one. But the more that I started speaking up, the more I realized actually, we all feel this way. But we're just not connected because the community is not cohesive. So the more that I spoke up, I hope that it gave other people an opportunity. It created a precedent because the only people really that was speaking up at the time were America-based. There really wasn't any trans representation in the UK, really, apart from me and Paris Lees, who you might know of. She's new contributing editor at British Vogue. So, yeah, I just thought let's speak up, let's talk about this. And then it's just started gaining more and more momentum, and then started booking more and more brands. And then I booked a campaign for L'Oreal. And then I think you all know how that turned out. But yeah, so I booked that, and it was amazing. I was the first trans woman to work with the brand in that capacity, and yeah, I mean, it could have been amazing, but because I wasn't given the opportunity to speak about, the realities of racism, rather than, again, I was just, really being employed to be a face or a person, or the image of a person rather than a whole person. So I ended up getting sacked, and and then everything just kind of blew up, and it got a lot of publicity that I'm sure that you're aware of the first time round. And then it was 3 years of really being seen as the bad guy in the press, of, really talking about racism, but somehow being framed as a racist myself, which was extremely frustrating because I've been doing anti-racism work for a long, long time. And I'm, I like to think, well, I am well educated in it. I mean, what I was saying wasn't anything new. This is decades of Black theory, Black critical theory, and, Black feminist thought, and queer theory. So I was echoing, decades of work of what my, predecessors, not my predecessors, my the opposite. But yeah, so I found it very frustrating, and I found it insulting to our communities and the different communities that I'm part of, the queer community, the Black community, and women as well, that, if I was a white man talking about these things, a white cisgender heterosexual man, it would never have been an issue. And it hasn't been an issue whenever straight white cisgender men have spoken up about it. In fact, at the time that I spoke about it, she's not a straight white man, but she's a straight white woman. Lord actually spoke about the Charlottesville riots, which was the post that got me sacked. So it's been a real case study over the past 3 years of how the media treats people differently depending on who they are and how they identify and how the world sees them. So cut 3 years into the future from that point, and we're in the midst of the Black Lives Matter protests after the George Floyd murder. And I see that L'Oreal has posted a black square along with a statement about anti-racism work, and I just thought, wait a minute. We haven't talked in 3 years about what went down, and it's not really, it's not really on. I felt I felt let down in that moment. I thought it was great in terms of what was said, but not necessarily resolved. So I just felt like you need to practice what you preach. This is so odd, by the way. I'm seeing myself in all of you. I've never done this before. So yeah, and yeah, I mean, I just kind of blew up. I just got very, very angry very quickly and just wrote a post wanting to hold them accountable, but not necessarily wanting to cancel them, just because I have my own thoughts about that. I understand why it's necessary to hold people accountable. I just think that sometimes it goes awry and doesn't have any resolve. And I didn't think that I would ever actually get to hear from the brand. And I ended up speaking to the president, the brand president, and getting on a 2-hour Zoom call with them. And she's a different president to the president that sacked me. And we just came to a resolve. We were like, well, this situation is not good, but what are we going to do to resolve it? How can we get to a place of growth and improvement? And obviously I wanted an apology for the past 3 years, and I got that. But something happened that I didn't think I didn't think it would happen. They offered me a job, and I mean, if it had been to front a campaign, I would have said no. Flat out, I would have said no, because I thought it would be inappropriate for me to be pushing a product that I don't believe in. But they asked me to come on board as part of their diversity and inclusion board, which I thought was a very smart move, because diversity and inclusion consultants don't come on board with brands that are getting it completely right, because there's no need for them. And my job as an activist is not just to call brands out, but it's to find a resolve and hopefully get them to improve on what they do and the impact that they have on the world around them. So I said yes. And yeah, I'm now on their diversity and inclusion board, which I think is an incredibly positive step in the right direction. I don't think it's necessarily complete systemic change, obviously, but to have a Black trans queer woman on the board of one of the biggest beauty brands in the world is a step in the right direction, because I can give my opinion and my insight into what is appropriate and what isn't appropriate when it comes to our representation, because we've been so misrepresented in the media for decades. If you're interested in that, then I suggest you watch Disclosure, which is a new documentary on Netflix looking into how we've been misrepresented throughout history in the media. So yeah, that's kind of where we're up to today. I'm now working with UN Women UK to help end violence against women and girls worldwide. I'm on the board of the National Youth Theatre in the UK to try and help get more trans and Black people into theatre. That's something that really helped me with my confidence when I was a kid. I'm patron of a charity that helps trans kids and their families called Mermaids. So I do lots of different bits and bobs. I really use fashion and beauty as a medium for talking about things that actually matter, because let's face it, fashion and beauty is great, but it's, you know, we're living in a world where there's, you know, impending doom everywhere around us. So it's really important that we use mediums that are a little more frivolous, a little, you know, more surface to actually speak about the stuff that matters in this moment. So that's really what I'm about, and I hope that that made sense.
Yes, it did. You're calling yourself an activist. I'm calling myself an activist too. But is it a choice being an activist? What are your thoughts about that?
You know what? I think if you call yourself an activist, I mean, there's some people that do activism that don't, you know, define themselves as an activist. I mean, I personally do, just because I think it makes my message more succinct. I think it allows people to know exactly what I'm doing here. And I mean, I think activism is action, and it's taking a message and a belief system and calling for change. And no matter, you know, there's different ways of being an activist. I see activism as a machine, and there's different cogs within that machine. So you could be an artist and lend your skills with art to activism. There's many people like Kate Moros, who is one of my friends, but they're also an incredible artist, and they're non-binary, but they, you know, they intertwine activism into everything that they do. So they did the last talk with the Spice Girls, and you know, it's very, very, very mainstream. But if you look at all of the art that was projected or that was beamed in the background of that performance, it was all about inclusivity and acceptance and understanding and respect of all people, all sexual identities and gender identities and races. So to have that, you know, intertwined in one of the biggest and most mainstream tools that you can get is a form of activism. But it depends, like, what you can do and your skill set and what you enjoy. I think that the best forms of activism is something that you can sustain. and that you aren't going to have, a wavering in attention with. So for me, it's public speaking usually, and it's not usually like this. With the beauty industry and the fashion industry, I've got a big platform, so I can utilize that, and I can get a lot of conversations going with my platform. So that's really where my speciality lies. But I think there's so many different ways to be active. If you want to call yourself an activist, then go for it. But just make sure that you're doing something.
Yeah, and while doing something, you can reach a lot of people because what you were saying, you have a big platform, but you reach a lot of people that get inspired or get to learn new things that you share. But it also comes with negativity, people and their opinions. How do you handle or deal with that?
It's difficult in the beginning, I think. It's always an adjustment to be exposed to that level of hatred sometimes can be really daunting. But I think ultimately it just comes down to, like, what do you think about you? Like, do you like yourself as a human being? Do you feel like you are where you want to be or on the path to where you want to be? I think that really it comes down to your own foundations. And if your own foundations are rocky, then it's so much easier for other people to sway you. So I just try to make sure that I'm doing self-work to make sure that I know where I'm going and who I am and who I want to be, and that I'm supported with friends and family, because then all of the other stuff doesn't matter. So that's how I cope with that. And also just, speaking about what you're going through, don't bottle it up. Always just get it out, and then it's so much less of an issue,
Yeah.
usually, if you can share how you're feeling, because there's usually other people that are feeling the same thing. And I think that's the beauty of social media, especially because we're now so connected. And it's much less lonely with a lot of topics, especially like things like rape and experiencing homophobia. And I mean, I had not plugged into the queer community when I was growing up. It just felt so lonely. I just didn't feel like there was anyone else out there. I mean, I grew up in the countryside in the middle of nowhere, so it was really, really lonely. But if I had had social media, then I would have felt a lot less alone. Obviously, it comes with its own set of problems, but on that positive tip, I think it would have really helped. And also the same with being a survivor of rape. I mean, you just didn't talk about it when it happened to me. I felt really ashamed, and it was just kind of compounded by the fact that I went to the police and they just made me feel 10 times worse about the fact that I'd been raped. So that just really clammed me up. And then talking about it and then seeing what happened with Me Too just really confirmed to me the power that social media can have in empowering people that have been through the ringer when it comes to society conversations that are usually deemed taboo.
Yeah, and because you share a lot, you also help a lot of people. Not only what you're already saying by being a black transgender woman, but also having dealt with rape. I guess that a lot of people reach out to you because, well, they see in you maybe what they missed when you were little. How do you, like, it's not possible to read everything, I guess, because if you have like 500,000 followers, I think it's difficult to answer everyone, but what is your way to still seeing them in a way? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I try to read as many as I can. Obviously, it's not really doable a lot of the time because, yeah, there's a lot of hate and disheartening stuff that's also sent my way. Um, sorry, can you see me? Am I bright enough?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I try to plug in, but there's, you also need to establish boundaries. And just because you're a public figure doesn't mean that everybody can have access to you all of the time. Because if that's the case, then you're not going to have anything for yourself. So I try to give as much as I can, but recognize the signs of when I'm slipping. And if you don't have, enough within to give other people, then you need to just take a moment. So I think it's really about monitoring, whether or not I'm burning out. If I've got a lot to give, then I give a lot. If I don't, then, it's time to just pull back. I think also it's, remembering that social media is not natural.
No.
I read somewhere, or I got told by somebody, that the amount of information that we absorb within one day is the same amount of information that a human being absorbed in a lifetime in medieval times. So our brains are not wired to take on all of this stuff. And especially in this moment of COVID-19, Black Lives Matter protests, police brutality being filmed, and then everything that I've, dealt with personally with regards to, public media storms. It's just, sometimes I literally don't have anything to give anybody, but in those moments, it's just time to just unplug, go offline a little bit more, start reading the news cycles, just recognize self-sabotage. My self-sabotage is, pushing myself over the line, and then, picking myself off the floor when when I'm just completely done. So I just try to make sure that I don't get there.
Yeah.
So just pull myself back.
Yeah. Is that also the price of activism, in a way?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, again, it depends what your activism is. Mine's a very public kind of activism, but there's people that are care workers, or teachers, and youth group workers, and there's all different kinds of activism. But for me, I don't know. I think sometimes just people expecting me to say the thing and do the right thing and be constantly on top of the news cycle, and when something traumatizing happens to someone that looks like me, it can feel like it is me. I think that most Black people feel that way, especially in this moment of seeing people that look like our family members be shot in the street by police, and then nothing happening about it. It does feel personal. So when a trans woman is being beat up and raped and murdered, it does feel like it's me, because that's happened to me. So it's very difficult to tell people, actually, no, I can't talk about this right now. I think that a lot of people don't. I think a lot of people forget, because I'm in a privileged position, that I am still a marginalized person, and I'm going through all of the same emotions that everybody else is, but I'm just expected to talk about it as well. And I'm not complaining at all, because this is my job, but it does take a toll sometimes.
Yeah, I can imagine. And it's also fine to sometimes say, I'm just tired, just leave me alone, you're still human, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I just feel guilty sometimes, because, I feel guilty, but then I also remember that I've been in the position of having absolutely nothing. And the way that my life has gone is just so bizarre. It's a little unreal. So I don't know. Sometimes I don't really know how to compute that, and it just gets really overwhelming. And obviously, you've got other people's opinions and expectations of who they think you are, and it's a lot sometimes, to be honest.
Yeah, I can imagine, because you were already saying you are a public figure. And how is it now in England to be a Black trans woman and being in the media the way that you are?
I mean, I mean, I don't really know. It's still quite isolating because there's not really that many Black trans women in the media. I mean, I think off the top of my head, I can think of one. And we're very, very different, and she does a very different kind of thing. So there's not really anybody in the UK that is of my intersections that's speaking about being a Black trans woman in the UK. I mean, there's just not really anybody. It's quite isolating sometimes because it's quite a unique narrative what we're experiencing in the UK. Where, you know, I mean, the UK is a good place to live. I mean, if you're in London, but then you go outside of London and you're, say, a Black trans woman, the likelihood that you would, you know, experience being othered is much higher than if you were in London, put it that way.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I really don't know, and it's really difficult sometimes to compute because I don't really have anyone to bounce off of with that. So I speak a lot to you know, other activists and people in the media, but there's not really anybody of my intersections now.
Oh, and you already mentioned in the beginning disclosure. I watched that with my partner who is non-binary, and it was in a way really hard to see it. And in the Netherlands, we're not doing very good, to say at least.
Well, I mean, same in the UK.
Yeah. Too bad. We do have the.
And unfortunately.
Oh, sorry. Can you say that again?
I said it's a worldwide trend, unfortunately. I can't really think of a place that is doing incredibly when it comes to trans rights, really.
No, but do you see it getting a little bit better?
I don't want to be like a party pooper, but no, not yet.
Okay.
And I think that it's really important that we're not complacent. So it isn't necessarily about it getting better, it's about us doing what we can do. So if our government's not going to support us, what can we do? So I don't think that if we're looking on a systemic level, I don't think it's getting any better, no. I think if anything, it's getting worse. You know, in America, Donald Trump is doubling down on using trans people in a way to embolden himself in terms of how he appears to his fundamentalist Christian evangelical base. So in the same way that, say, Nixon and Reagan used Black people and gay people to embolden himself in the eyes of the same people. And then in the UK, Boris Johnson's kind of doing the same, unfortunately. It's really disheartening. So no, on a systemic level, I don't think it's getting any better. But I do feel like because of all of this vitriol and awfulness, I feel like as a community, we are coming together and we're becoming a lot more organized. We're, you know, protesting. We're checking in on each other. We're organizing, you know, online check-ins, and especially in this time of COVID, the way that we are navigating community is changing. So it's great to see that we're much more organized than we used to be. When I started my transition, there was none of that. There was nothing. If anything, it was extremely competitive and very much operating within the male gaze. I was under the illusion, awfully, when I began my transition, that the more feminine I looked in the eyes of men, that was the measure of my transition, if a man found me attractive. And I mean, there's women that think that, you know, that there's cisgender women that think that. And it's really, you know, it's not the tea for any of us. So I think we've come so far, and the tools are there. And I think that that's the most important thing, because I didn't have the tools when I started my journey.
No. And well, since you're saying it's not really getting any better, I also well, it's not as if you have to have the answer, but maybe you know a starting point. Because if we look at the statistics from trans women of color or trans women that are black, and their life expectancy is
35,
yeah. Yeah, and you are,
34.
yeah. Well, that makes me,
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it's always kind of been in the back of my head, like, oh, okay, I've got like 4 years left, 3 years left, 2 years left, and like technically next year I'm dead. So it's awful. It's really bad. And what's even worse is that our governments don't care. So yeah, it's definitely not getting better on that front. But again, we need to focus on what we can do.
yeah,
If we can rally around each other in a way that, you know, almost just cuts out the government, you know. I mean, if we're waiting for the government to improve things for us, then it's going to be a very long way, unfortunately. I think we need to be plugging into each other and making sure that we're making our community as strong as it can be. In the same way, you know, that the gay community did in the midst of the AIDS crisis, the HIV and AIDS crisis, when it first erupted, the government did nothing.
no,
Absolutely nothing. And it was down to communities and allies as well, you know. Elizabeth Taylor ran an underground medication clinic. So I think it's really about what you can do and what allies can do to help a community, you know, gain access to the services that we're being denied. We're about to be kicked. Well, I mean, they're trying to kick us out of female refuges and public toilets. And I don't know where they expect us to go, because I'm not using the men's, but it's, you know, I mean, there's all of these big plans, but there's literally no resolve. I mean, how are you going to make trans people's lives livable if you are actively discriminating against us?
yeah. And is it also difficult, because I find difficulty in that, being a black woman. We now have the Black Lives Matter movement, and sometimes I see that within the movement there's still well, a difference between being black and being queer and black.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, there's, you know, always people that don't truly understand the full picture. I mean, within feminism, there's, you know, there's a branch of feminism that's trans exclusionary. There's racism within feminism as well, and you know, there's gay people that plan on voting for Trump. So there's always people within marginalized communities that don't get it, and we need to make sure that they do get it eventually, because the best and only way really that we're going to succeed is if we are cohesive as a community, and that needs to include all branches of blackness, all branches, regardless of how you identify or who you love or who you find sexually attractive. I mean, it shouldn't matter. I mean, that's how the opposition win, because we're divided. So yeah, I'm all for people just opening their minds and realizing that, you know, the work is never done. I don't know as much as I should know about anti-Semitism, and that's something that I'm starting to really make sure that I'm brushed up on. I don't know as much as I know more than I used to, but I still don't know enough about Islamophobia and the experience of my Muslim siblings. I don't know what it's like to experience the life in a wheelchair, but I'm making sure that I'm educating myself and listening to my disabled siblings that are part of the LGBTQ spectrum as well. So, you know, I don't think that there's shame in not understanding, but you need to be making sure that you are trying.
Yeah.
And you are on the road to educating yourself. And that's really what it is. It's not expecting other people to educate you. You need to educate yourself. You need to be doing the work, not, you know, in the comment section expecting somebody to educate you.
Yeah, willing to be intersectional in a way, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And you were also talking about L'Oreal, well, I followed it on your Instagram that you were calling them out, and I like that you said I never had the intention of canceling them, but
You just, I don't know. I know that. I mean, this is a topic that really divides a lot of people, but really, I don't see the point in cancelling somebody unless there's an end resolve. And like, of course, like if we're cancelling somebody that's done something heinous, like sexually abusing somebody, such as, you know, Harvey Weinstein being cancelled, or R. Kelly being cancelled, or that kind of thing. I think that that's an extremely serious case. They're extremely serious cases, and I don't necessarily think that that's cancelling somebody. I think that that's wanting resolve and wanting consequences, and you know. I think that a lot of the time, cancelling people, say, is like, you know, cancelling like Dua Lipa. I've seen Dua Lipa's cancelled party trending so many times on online, and I don't know. I just kind of feel like can't we have a conversation rather than trying to ostracize somebody from society when really cancelling doesn't do anything. You know, I don't feel like it's a way forward for us, especially as liberal people. We don't want to be fighting in this time when we have other stuff to do that's way more important. I don't know. I'm very, you know, I'm not necessarily set in my thinking. I think that the conservative side of society has been cancelling people for decades, and it's really about how you look at cancelling and who you are. And you know, I mean, cancel culture I don't think is a thing. I think that people that have a certain privilege and access and money can't be cancelled because there's no true ramifications for their actions. Yet I can see that, you know, the Conservatives have been cancelling queer, black and women, queer black people and women for decades, and you know, they've never worked again because of it. So it really does depend on who you are and your access.
yeah, we also have our problems here in the Netherlands with canceling people, and then, in my opinion, canceling the wrong people, because the people that are getting canceled are activists that are black and saying that some things are not okay. Like, we still have blackface over here, and when people speak up, then they get canceled by.
Well, exactly. I mean, J.K. Rowling in the UK is talking about being cancelled, but what is actually happening is she's being held accountable
Yeah.
for her actions. I think there's a narrative that cancel culture is an enemy of free speech, and it's stifling open debate. But when people's identity are brought into the mix, that's not debate. You can't debate somebody's identity or right to exist, or you can't, you know, you can't perform un-PC comedy that is offensive to people and then say that it's your right to do so without being critiqued. So I think really what we're seeing with a lot of people on the right that are complaining about cancel culture is that they are now being held accountable when, in, you know, historically they haven't been, because social media hasn't existed. So, but then on the left, I can see a lot of people being, pop stars being cancelled for absolutely ridiculous things, when really what we want is for them to improve, because it would be much more beneficial to us as, a demographic or community if people learnt from their mistakes rather than felt shamed into doubling down or even pushed to the other side. So, and I think that's the real issue, is that we run the risk of alienating people when we're already disenfranchised.
Yeah. And well, now you're still working for L'Oréal, right?
Yes.
And do you
I'll be working with them for the next 3 years.
next 3 years? And
Yeah.
congratulations on that.
It's going to turn this light on.
Oh,
Is
hey.
that better?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay.
Do you already feel that maybe there are just little changes, but do you already feel that they are trying or seeing things differently since you're there?
I mean, because of COVID-19, we haven't actually, had in real life
Yeah.
meetings. I can't talk too much about it, but I believe that the will's there. The conversations that we've been having are very positive, and the brand president is amazing. She's, she's a woman, obviously, and I feel really positive about it. I think that it's always good to go into these things with a positive mindset. So yeah, I don't have anything bad to say about them anymore. I feel like the situation has been resolved. I feel like it was a really bad situation, but again, the reason why it happened is not the people that are there now. So I do feel like it's progressive in the context of, what is. I feel like it's tied up what's happened over the past 3 years.
Yeah. Well, can't wait to see what's going to happen in the next 3 years that you're there. I also have my last question, and then I'm going to check the audience if they have a question over here. I saw an interview that you did where you said that your biggest fear was when you were little to get buried having not the correct gender, right? Do I say it correctly?
Yeah.
That made me think about us here in the Netherlands embracing also gender reveal parties. I don't know why. Everything that's in the States, yeah, I know. And that's also a thing here. And how do you feel about that? Because also in the UK, it's a thing, right? To have, well, they call it gender, but it's genital reveal party, but they call it a gender reveal party.
I think it's a shame. I think that it's just very basic, really, isn't it? Unfortunately, I just think I don't know, I don't see the need. I think that it highlights how brainwashed a lot of people are when it comes to gender. I feel like people rest so much on what gender means, but they're not thinking about why. Why do you care so much about what genitals your child has when you don't know how they'll identify in the future? I mean, there's a chance that they could be trans, but I mean, it's a small chance, but it's almost just saying, oh, it's a small chance, so we're not going to do it because trans people aren't really people. So we're going to throw it anyway, and then we'll backtrack later. It just seems silly, and it's a very new concept. It's not something that's been around for ages. Why can't we just celebrate the fact that you've got a child? Why does it have to be? I mean, no one's saying that you can't celebrate your child. No one would say that. I mean, you've created a miracle. It's incredible, but to celebrate what genitals your child has got, and then to rest, to put everything that you associate with those genitals onto your child, it just shows that you're not willing to let that go.
No.
That you're not willing to think outside of the box of what gender is in your mind.
Yeah.
So that's what bothers me. Not necessarily the party. Like, do what you want. I mean, I'm not that bothered about it, but I'm bothered about the importance that's placed on gender in that party.
Yeah, there's still a way to go. Is there anyone here that online we have questions?
I have a question online. You spoke about the taxing, how it can be very taxing to be an activist and be a public figure. What do you do for self-healing?
Smoke lots of weed. What do I do for healing? Again, I think it's really down to your support network and knowing yourself as well, recognizing patterns in your behavior. I think that's such a strong thing. A lot of us, just operate sometimes on autopilot, and it's really important to, listen to your body, but also, just be honest with your friends. If your friends are talking to you about if they're worried about you, or if you need to have friends that know when to be worried about you as well. And I mean, I'm very lucky that I've got incredible management as well, and that my management aren't trying to just take me to the cleaners and just make money with me. They actually care about the content of the work that I'm doing. They never push me to go to do jobs that are just good for the money. It's everything that I do has to have a message. I mean, even if I work with a brand, then it has to have a positive message or a positive takeaway for the people that follow me. I would never push things like weight loss products or anything like that, and they don't push me to do anything like that either, because they don't believe in that. So I think it's really about who you have around you. If you have energy drainers or people that take more than they give, then you just need to be very, very diligent, and you need to shoot from a place of love for yourself. And I went through so many years of hating myself and hating who I was and hating the way that I looked and hating, the way that I taught or the way that I moved. And it's just exhausting, and you'll end up with a life that you hate. So if you start to love yourself and start to recognize your worth and the value of your contributions, and think about what you want, not just who you want to be. And I feel like everything just kind of slots into place around that.
That was a good answer. That
Perfect
person
answer.
happy? Okay,
Yeah.
good. Is there anyone else with the question? Don't be shy. She's here now. Yeah, a question over there.
Oh my God, you're looking at me now.
Yeah.
Hi. First of all, I'm so honored to see you and hear you talk live like this. So thank you so much for joining this conference. I'm really curious about, your job at L'Oreal, and you already said something, you can't talk too much about it, but maybe you can say something about how you think a good board that functions around inclusivity should work in a practical way, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah, I can't talk too much about what we're doing, but I mean, in terms of a diversity and inclusion board, I feel like it's looking at imagery, looking at campaigns, and being like having a different eye. The way that I see it is if a company, an advertising company, say, only has a board of only white people who are Christian, who are all men, then that is, that means that the products that that the big advertising campaigns that they form, there's a really big chance of oversight, and there's a chance that it could be offensive to women. There's a chance that it could be offensive to Black people. There's a chance that it could be offensive to everybody who isn't part of that demographic, especially when it's a privileged demographic. So to be a Black trans queer woman on the board, I get to be a voice for my communities. I get to talk about, how I see that branding, how I see that campaign, whether or not that imagery works. Sometimes a lot of the offensive things in branding and campaigns in fashion and beauty, they're not intentionally offensive, but it's not necessarily about the intention, it's always about the impact. So I think it's about monitoring that impact and, calling it out and being, I think every time that I see something happen with a brand online, I just think, how did this get past so many people and still go out? And it's because people in the room are not diverse and it's not getting put in front of the right people. So I hope that I can be that person that, should something that's unintentionally offensive be put in front of me, I can say, no, this is not gonna work. You need to change this. So, I mean, I hope that I have that opportunity. I mean, I hope that it doesn't come to that. I hope that, we all can push forward and there's no need to have those conversations. But I mean, the reality is that sometimes there is.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yep.
Hi. So I was wondering. So I don't know where to look now. I'm confused. I was wondering. So you're working for the cosmetics industry at the moment, but you started for modeling and with fashion. How do you see the fashion industry has changed over the course compared to the cosmetics industry? Has it changed?
I mean, it kind of has. I feel like, people are wanting more authenticity. I feel like when I first started, it was more about selling an unattainable ideal. And it was about, don't you want to try to look like this, rather than don't you want to try and be the best you? And I feel like now a lot of branding is more geared to being the best you and embracing your differences. Of course, there's a lot of, there's a lot of still like privilege that comes with that. I see a lot of light-skinned Black people being employed as the Black person. So it's kind of, there's a lot of tokenism still there. And I feel like, we're still not tackling a lot of problems. Not necessarily problems, but representation is still not there for disabled people. Representation is still not there for body hair a lot of the time. A lot of it's all very like kind of bald. I worked with a brand called Estrid, who were I think they're the first brand to actually include body hair for a women's shaving brand. And that's crazy that, shaving, when we're not seeing the realities, but it's the same with like, female hygiene products, we're not seeing, they're still using blue to soak up blood. So yeah, I think we've got a long way to go. I think that we're still hung up on, navigating beauty from the male gaze. I mean, if we were just a little bit more real about it. Yeah, I think we've got a long way to go, but with fashion, I think it depends on where you are. In the UK, fashion has come a long way. I think that the catwalks are much more diverse than they used to be in terms of body shape and race. We're seeing a lot more trans people and gender non-conforming people on the catwalk, but I think that's largely down to the designers rather than, say, the industry at large. I don't think there's enough opportunity for trans people within the industry behind the scenes. We're very much still just in front of the camera and not necessarily behind the scenes. And I think that that's where we need to be because everything just kind of, disseminates out from behind the scenes. But we run the risk of being a trend if we're just in front of the camera. And the power's not in front of the camera, unless you're Bella and Gigi.
Okay, thank you so much.
That's no shade to Bella and Gigi, by the way. I think they're fab.
An online question? Yeah.
So You speak very openly about most of your experiences. How did you get so open? What made you open up to the world and open up in your activism, in your social media? What made you do that?
Oh, I think I just had enough. I think I just had enough of feeling ashamed of myself. And just, I just realized that when someone said something to me about who I was, it was because I agreed with them that I was upset. And I was upset because I didn't feel powerful in myself. So when like someone would, call me the N-word, I would feel upset about it, because not because it was wrong, but because I didn't feel empowered in my blackness. And when someone would call me a tranny, I would feel upset because I would hate the fact that I was trans. Like in school, someone, if I was called like the F word, then I would feel really, really upset and fly into a rage because I was not okay with the fact that I was queer. But then you start working on those things and you start thinking, actually, I'm not ashamed of being myself. I'm only ashamed of being who I am because I'm being told to be ashamed. But really, I like being queer. I like being trans. I mean, if there was nobody telling me otherwise, then I wouldn't think about it. I would just, I look how I look, but I'm still the same person. When I look in the mirror, I like who I am. I love the fact that I'm black. I'm plugged into that and I draw strength from that. Being a black woman is so incredible, and the sisterhood that comes with that. But it's taken me a long time to understand that because society tells you not to. Society tells you that you should be ashamed of yourself and that you are, that you're not enough. And I think that it's really about recognizing that, regardless of who you are, you are. I mean, you are you. So I forgot what the original question was, but that answered it.
The original question was, how did you get to be so open?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it. That's it. It's just, learning to generate self-love rather than chasing the feeling of being loved. Madonna said something really powerful that I remember when I was at the beginning of my transition. I think she said, power is knowing that you're not loved and not being destroyed by it. And I think that that's such a powerful thing, is drawing power from within rather than constantly looking for approval and validation. And approval and validation is great, but you need to be able to generate that approval and validation within yourself. So when you don't have it, you're like, well, I don't give a fuck anyway. Because I like who I am. So, I mean, it's taken a long time, and it's really something that I try to install into my younger friends. I've got a lot of, queer kids that I've adopted as my children. And I try to tell them that none of this matters. You put way too much emphasis on social media and, being liked on there and how many likes you've got. And I get it. Whenever I upload a post and the algorithm hates it, I just kind of feel a bit like, oh, but you need to acknowledge that that is not okay. You need to be able to build yourself up from within rather than expecting other people to build you up for you. And also the fact that nothing's going to happen unless you make it happen. And I'm very proud of what I've done. I'm very proud of who I've, become in myself, not just in my career, but I feel like I'm a kind person. My cat's in heat, by the way, so if you can hear her, that's she's so horny, it's ridiculous. So yeah, I like who I am, and I think I'm a kind person. I try to make people feel good when I go into the room. I'm not trying to dominate people and be powerful. I just want to make people feel good. I want people to feel good about themselves. I want other people to go and make other people feel good. because I felt so shit for so long, and there's no point to it. Nothing good comes out of shame, ever. You just destroy yourself and destroy others. So, yeah, I'm on a bit of a campaign against shame. That's going to be in my book. So if you want to buy my book,
I love this. Yeah.
it's in my bio on Instagram.
We'll check it. We'll check it.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, all throughout this, not necessarily lockdown, but pandemic, I've been writing this book, and it's going to be the death of me. It's been the hardest thing that I've ever written, because, I mean, it's 80,000 words, but I'm going through all of my trauma and talking about how you can draw triumph out of your trauma. But in doing that, you know, I've obviously had to revisit some things that I would rather have forgotten. And my mind has actually blanked out a lot. So there's also dealing with that and trying to navigate relearning a lot of what's actually happened to me that I've deleted or semi-deleted as a way of coping. So yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to getting it out there. I'm looking forward to finishing it. I've only got one more chapter left. It's nearly done. But, you know, I think everybody's got a story in them, and I hope that I can make people feel a little bit more happy about theirs.
When will it be out?
It's out the 1st of July.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, it'll be out in the Netherlands in 1st of July. So out in Europe, 1st of July, and then I'm not sure when it's out in America.
Okay. Anyone else with a question? Yeah.
Well, you already talked about, well, in school, people calling you names, and I was wondering, what was your childhood like? And if you don't feel comfortable talking about it, that's also fine.
Yeah, my childhood wasn't great. It wasn't good. It was extremely traumatic, unfortunately. And my parents raised me in an area that was affluent, but it was just extremely white, and I was not. So I just tried to make myself into something that I wasn't, and it was just very hard. I was bullied relentlessly. I didn't have any friends. I was like, you know, all of this is in the book. I go in a lot more into detail about the ins and outs of it, but I was, you know, really traumatized. I was like locked in cupboards and just left there. I don't want to cry. Yeah, it wasn't good. But it really just gave me the drive to be who I wanted to be, and I was really relentless with that. I was, you know, I was hell-bent on being the person that I wasn't allowed to be in my childhood. So, but yeah, but even then, you know, that kind of like sent me off the rails a little bit in my early 20s. And I had issues with, you know, partying too much, and I ended up in abusive relationships because I couldn't recognize the love that I actually deserved. So I ended up, you know, thinking that if I was with hypermasculine men who saw my womanhood and validated my womanhood, then that's what I should do. And with that often came a lot of toxic masculinity, a lot of controlling, you know, dictating what I could wear, where I needed to be, how I answered my phone. I was never, you know, necessarily hit by my partners, but the emotional trauma of being manipulated by a narcissist is sometimes just as bad, because it goes on for a long time. You don't realize that it's happening until they break you. And, you know, sometimes I thought actually I could have done with a broken arm, because I would just thought actually that would be enough. And then I would leave, because that we're programmed to know that physical violence isn't okay. And I would have hoped to think that I would have just left then, but because I didn't realize that he was actually breaking my mind, I just stayed until the point that my mind broke. And yeah, I don't want any woman to go through that, regardless of trans or not. It was just the worst. So a lot of the trauma that I experienced in my childhood followed me throughout my life, to the point where, you know, my career really saved me. And getting to speak about my experiences saved me, because I realized that I wasn't the only one. And I started to realize, actually, there's words for this, and it wasn't my fault. And I'm not, you know, all of the things that my ex-partners said that I was. And there's people that I've actually helped and that I can continue to help. And I'm now working for all of the charities that I wanted to work for. You know, I had dreams of working for the UN when I was in high school, but then I got into a relationship and he was told that I was never good enough to work for the UN, and that why would the UN want to employ somebody like me? So I'm really proud of myself that I've gotten to where I've gotten.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
There's a question coming. You cannot see us, but.
Hi, my name is Nilza. I have a question about your followers that probably reach to you about your transition. Do you, in youngsters probably, do they ask you for any guidance about transition?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I get a lot of people ask me questions that sometimes are a little problematic, like I would never endorse, you know, some of the procedures that I've had, like, you know, I mean, I've had facial feminization surgery, and I've been very open about that. You know, because it was essentially taken. If you don't know what facial feminization surgery is, I actually had it in the Netherlands. I had it in Belgium. That is the Netherlands, isn't it? But
That's not the same, Munroe.
it's not.
No. It's, yeah. No, no. No, it's not. It's, no, not nearly, no. We are way cuter over here. We are more fun. But it's okay. It's okay.
Forgive me. Forgive me. Anyway. So yeah, I had facial feminization surgery. If you don't know what facial feminization surgery is, it's essentially filing down your skull. So it is very invasive, but it's taken away the bone that is actually developed during puberty. So I look a lot more like I would have looked should I have not gone through a male puberty, should my body have not been flooded with testosterone, which unfortunately it was. And yeah, so I'm very open about that, because that was quite a radical surgery, but it's a surgery that a lot of trans people have. With a lot of the other things, like I'm not, you know, endorsing, like, you know, like getting my lips done, or, you know, cosmetic things that I may do now. But, and also I get asked a lot about my hormones and like what dosage I'm on. And, you know, that's something that you should be doing with your doctor, and different people have different needs and requirements. So I try to bear in mind my responsibility when it comes to aesthetics. So I don't focus too much on that. I think it's really important to focus on, you know, focusing on what do you want to be outside of transitioning? Because for me personally, I wanted my transition so badly to be successful that I rested too much on the aesthetics, and I didn't think necessarily about what I wanted to be. I know that I mean, I was working in fashion and beauty, so I kind of knew anyway, but I didn't have a long-term game plan. And then I got to, say, 3 years into the future and my career's going really well. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't actually plan this far. I didn't even think that, I think subconsciously, I didn't think that I'd be alive. There's such a narrative of trauma and tragedy within our community. I just, I think part of me actually assumed that maybe you're going to die young. And I think I really did actually think I was going to die young because I had recurring nightmares of that my parents were going to bury me as a man. And I've never identified as a man in my life. So, but that's how they saw me. So it's a lot to deal with. But I just try to encourage them to think a little deeper about who they want to be rather than what they want to look like.
Yeah, thank you.
And I apologize about that. My geography is not good.
No, that's okay. We'll just remember this, but it's totally fine.
Okay, it's all right. I'll let you have it.
I think we have time for one last question. Anyone in the audience? Anyone online? Yeah.
Well, it's not online, it's actually my question.
Okay. Oh.
Yesterday we had a panel with Alok and Olave, and they spoke about radical acceptance. And Alok actually said, I love those bitches. Meaning...
Who's those bitches?
The people who are, maybe the haters online, maybe the people who are against our cause. So, actually embracing them instead of not responding with hate to hate with hate, but actually saying, I feel very sorry for you, you think this way, and I wish you would see things in my way. How do you see that? How do you see radical acceptance? Do you apply that to yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I do feel sorry for these people as well because, happy people don't go around abusing people, unfortunately. But I think it just becomes a lot easier to understand why you're being abused when you understand the world that you're in. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't realize that we are living in a system and we're all part of a narrative. Depending on your race, your gender, your sexuality, you are part of a narrative. And I think it's important to recognize your role within that. So if you're a white person, then you've got a responsibility to understand that you have a privilege that you don't experience racism. It's systemic racism, you just don't. If you're an able-bodied person, then it's important to recognize that you are not discriminated on behalf of, your bodily ability. So you have no idea what it's like to be a disabled person. So you shouldn't speak on behalf of disabled people. White people shouldn't speak on behalf of black people when it comes to racism. Straight people shouldn't say what isn't acceptable when it comes to homophobia or, transphobia with cis people. It should be gay people saying what isn't acceptable. It should be trans people saying what isn't acceptable. It should be black people saying what isn't acceptable. So, when someone says that to me, I almost just feel like, well, who are you? Like, who told you that you could say this to me? So, I mean, I'm not too bothered now. It makes me sad that we live in a world where there's such lack of empathy and compassion for people that these people don't see themselves in. It makes me sad that they see humanity as a hierarchy and that certain people deserve respect and certain people don't, because that's a slippery slope. And we've seen throughout history how much of a slippery slope that is and where that slope can lead. So yeah, that scares me because left unchecked, that's where we could end up. And yeah, that freaks me out a lot, especially when, we think about who's running the country and who's becoming more and more radicalized. White supremacy poses the biggest threat in, I think, the UK and the US at the moment. So that makes me worried. So, I mean, I don't take it lightly, but I also don't take it personally. I think it's important to not, take it in, but to recognize the severity of it should it be left unchecked. So I try to check it. I don't check it if they're hurling personal insults. I approach everything from a systemic perspective. So I talk about how we can beat this from, attacking it on a social level, not attacking individuals. I don't get into petty drama. I don't go back and forth with somebody on the internet unless I've got time and I'm feeling petty. But I mean, I don't get into it in the comment section that often. I don't think it's healthy. And when I do, I usually delete it straight away, because sometimes, we all succumb to, firing back when we think, oh, that's not fair. You shouldn't talk to me like that. And then you want to defend yourself. But then I think it's really important to pull yourself back and, not go to their level. And every now and again, we all fall short, but it's important to pull yourself back when you do.
Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in with us. I hope next year, or maybe another time soon, you can come and visit us. And don't take the plane to Brussels, take it to Amsterdam. No, we forgave you already. I'm just kidding.
How did I think that Belgium was in Amsterdam? No, Belgium was in the Netherlands.
Yeah, it's next to us, and half of the Belgian people speak kind of Dutch, Vlaams, they call it.
Why? Because my surgeon, I think that this is why you're next door, aren't you?
Yeah.
Okay, well this is why I thought that I was in the Netherlands.
Okay. We will forgive you if you promise to come next time when there is no COVID anymore. Then it's all.
Oh my God, absolutely! I was looking so forward to coming. I had a whole outfit that I would look really silly wearing in my bedroom right now. But next time, 100%, I would love to. And thank you so much for all coming as well. It means so a lot to see you supporting me as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And happy Pride.
What did you say at last?
I said happy Pride.
Thank you.
It's great to see the intersectional flags as well. We love that. We love to see it.
Yeah, the flags, yeah. Bye. Ik dacht, moet ik nou nog wat zeggen? Nee. Dank jullie wel.